Hi, friends. Nicolette here from The Green Mustache. I'm the CEO owner and founder of The Green Mustache and of Richer Health Consulting. And today we are going to be talking about organic food and the importance of organic food. Now, I have to apologize. Technically wise, I'm not great about solving tech problems on the computer, and being as busy as I am with 3 kids and 3 or 4 businesses, can't remember how many we have now, I have not been able to sort out the tech issues on my laptop, which is what I normally use to do these. So we're sitting in my office in Green Mustache headquarters in Whistler, BC, and we're going to be talking about organic food and the importance of it. So because of those tech problems from last week, unfortunately, you missed an amazing interview with France Fauchot, who did the Gerson Therapy to heal herself of endometriosis. We had so much fun doing that interview. It was such a crazy day. I called her and asked her how she was doing that morning. She called me, and we had both had these big emotional breaks where we were both crying. A friend of hers had lost her mom to cancer. I had a crazy week, and anyway, it ended up being quite a funny interview because it both started off with us having puffy eyes, ended up with us laughing. It was such an amazing interview, and unfortunately there's no sound, so you won't be able to hear about what France did to heal herself of her endometriosis. Something that the doctors had prescribed, pretty much coming back for surgery every 6 months, and heavy duty drugs to keep the endometriosis in check, not to cure it, not to fully heal her, so she could get her life back, but something that would require ongoing intervention for the rest of her life. And she was able to heal herself using food and the Gerson Therapy. We are going to redo that interview and spend another hour together where we actually do have sound. So I apologize for that, but let's jump into organic food this week, because there's a lot of debate about organic food, right? It's like, is it really organic? Are the farmers really spraying? How important is it in our diet and in our life? And we are going to talk about how important organic food is for everything, for the animals on the earth, for the insects on the planet, for basically our health, for our water, for our air, for everything. Now, there is often a lot of debate about organic food because is it the highest standard that exists out there? So the first thing I say to people, if you are struggling with, that organic food is actually more expensive, that you can't afford it, that you actually don't think that it is legitimate, ask yourself this one question, and it's just one question. What is the alternative? If you do not buy organic food, what are you going to buy instead? Are you going to buy conventionally grown food that is sprayed with insecticides and herbicides and other chemicals that's genetically modified, where the seed itself has been genetically modified for that plant to actually carry those chemicals within it that will then actually grow into the plant so that it fights off insects and kills insects? Now, if that insecticide, herbicide, pesticide actually does damage to a living insect, a living bug, a living organism, you have to ask yourself, what is it actually doing to you? Now, that is the first thing that I say is, what is your alternative? Are you going to buy the potentially inferior quality, non-organic food? Now, if your answer to that is yes, then you also have to ask yourself, what is that quality of food doing to our planet, to our waterways, and so on? But we're going to get into that afterwards. So what is your alternative? Well, one alternative is that you actually grow your food yourself. So if you have the land to be able to do it, where you can test the soil quality, you can nutrify the soil on an ongoing basis, replace it with its lost selenium and iodine and magnesium and nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus and, all the other 82 plus nutrients that our soil needs to actually grow nutrient dense food. If you're going to do that, then I'd say 100% go for it. You don't need to get organically certified, but you need to test your soil quality, and you need to test the quality of what's being grown in that soil. Now, most of us on the planet are not going to do that. Farms are shrinking in size, they're shrinking in number, and basically they're being owned by fewer and fewer organizations who, the reason for having mass agriculture and monocrops is because they say that there is a food scarcity issue on the planet where there's populations that don't have access to food. Fully agree with that. But the key word there is access. So what do we mean by access to food? So we know that organic crops, actually the science has come out that it actually yields better crops, better yield, and it's more sustainable in drought conditions or in flood conditions, and that organic crops, the root systems are deeper, they're stronger, they're actually going to withstand the environmental disasters that take place versus these monocrops and that Monsanto and all these other, big chemical companies think that they are growing, that, we know that the root systems are shallower, they're not as long, and the minute there's a drought that comes through, those crops are pretty much like destroyed. So with organic crops, it's the other thing to note is that they don't necessarily produce a smaller yield. And in fact, it's been proven over and over again that they actually produce just the same amount of yield or even more. And when we talk about people in this world not having food, yes, we know that there's people who live off $1 a day who don't really get to eat. They maybe get a handful of rice every couple of days. And the issue is not how much food we are producing, because we actually waste so much food. There's so many great food documentaries that you can watch out there. We're going to include some links in future emails and Facebook ads and newsletters, but you can watch those documentaries and you'll see that the volume of food that is produced for developing and, first world countries, basically we waste so much food. We waste the majority of food in our homes, actually, where we overpurchase, we don't consume it, and then we throw it out. The grocery stores, they don't want to sell food that is slightly scarred or has, brown spots on it. They want it to be perfect, the right size. And thank goodness there's so many individuals in this world that are actually looking at food waste and creating actually whole entire restaurants based on food that's being wasted from grocery stores because it's just not perfect, or it's not the right size, or the angle of the banana doesn't have the right shape. So when it comes to food waste, we are wasting the 2% of the world's population that are earning over $30,000 a year or more. The 2%. We are creating 98% of the food waste and 98% of the environmental disasters that are happening in the world. And we are responsible for really the degradation of this planet. And that food that is being thrown out could be going to third world countries. It could be going to developing nations. It could be going to communities and individuals that live on $1 a day and don't have access to food. And again, the key word is access. So a lot of times it's that the roads can't even get to these villages and these communities where we could bring that food that's being wasted. Those roads aren't being built because there's political, how do I say this politely, but there's political fraud that's happening, and the roads aren't being built. The money that's being donated to these countries to build the roads or to build the ports or to, really get access of food to these individuals is not being provided. So really what's happening in the world, it's access to food that is the issue, not the amount of food that's being grown. So when we look at food and the need to really grow organic food, which we're going to talk about, don't buy into what Monsanto is telling you. You have to do your research. You have to see the amount of waste that's being created, and you have to see where you can put your energies to make sure that people in this world who don't have access to food are actually getting it and they're actually receiving it. So let's talk about organic food. And let's talk about you and where organic food is really important in your body. So with organic food, when you are ingesting the herbicides, the pesticides, the chemicals, and when they go into your body from the non-organic food that you may want to be purchasing or might be purchasing, those chemicals, the Roundup, the glyphosate, the other chemicals that are in those foods, they're actually destroying your gut cells and the cells that line your intestinal tract, your stomach cells. And basically they're designed to do that. They're designed to make the insects that consume that try and feed off those crops. It's meant to make their little tiny baby little, cellular stomachs explode and kill them. And so the same thing is pretty much happening to us when we can ingest that genetically modified food with all of those chemicals. And that's the last thing you need to be putting into your body. Now, I did have a carrot apple juice around here somewhere, and I want to show that to you because, let me just step away. I'm still with you here. So this here is a carrot apple juice that I like to consume every day. When you're doing the Gerson therapy, you're basically consuming one of these. This is 16 ounces, but if you were consuming these, you'd be consuming anywhere from, 1 or 2 to 6 or 7 carrot apple juices, 8 ounces each, and you'd be consuming those every day. Now, in this jar, what you're seeing here is you are seeing 8 beautiful medium-sized organic carrots and 2 green apples. That's actually what is making this jar. That is how much produce it took to create the 16-ounce jar. Now, I'm going to consume half of it now, and in a couple hours, I'm going to consume the other half. The best is when you can make it fresh and consume it within 15 minutes of making it or less. That is the best. So with regards to organic produce, I would never in a million years ever put 8 carrots and 2 apples and juice it and get that beautiful, liquid gold nutrients out of it and into this jar and consume the chemicals that come along with the carrots and apples being non-organic. Because in a given day, you would never eat 8 carrots and 2 green apples. For most people anyway, they're not consuming that. So the minute you start juicing and you start putting 4 times the volume of what you'd actually be eating into your body, you're taking in 4 times the chemicals. Now, who wants to do that? Nobody should ever want to do that. So when you think about juicing, you have to make sure it is always 100% organic. There's a ton of juice bars out there in the world that are using non-organic produce. We have staff that leave those organizations and come and work for us because they understand the importance of using organic all the time, because they don't want to be serving customers that come into the restaurants pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, and God knows what other chemicals and genetically modified food. So it is important to always be using organic when you are juicing. Now, in our family, for the last 20 years, we've been consuming 100% organic at all times. And in fact, we don't go on vacations because we can't afford to. And we prioritize organic food over going on vacations. We prioritize organic food over having, toys and crazier accommodations and all of the frivolous stuff that we could spend our money on. It's fun to spend our money on those things if you can, but ultimately if the first thing in our family that comes first is organic food. Now, let's talk about price of organic food. A lot of people feel that, consuming organic is more expensive, but let's look at what you're consuming in a given day. So if you're waking up in the morning and you are going out for a coffee and then you buy a muffin and maybe, at lunchtime you are purchasing, packages of organic crackers and organic, packaged foods. A lot of those packaged foods are actually way more expensive than if you just bought the produce itself and ate it. And in fact, the produce is often more voluminous because it comes with all the liquid that's associated with it. So you're not only getting the water, you're getting the nutrients, you're getting the fiber, the carbohydrates, the beautiful omega-3s and 6s that come in, for example, like a romaine lettuce or a beautiful, squash and potato. So when you're buying a potato chip, it's basically a baked or a dehydrated form of the actual potato itself. You are much better off buying a bag of potatoes, like organic potatoes. What are they, like $4.99 a pound? Or not a pound, but for a 5-pound bag. And 5 pounds of potatoes goes a long way in a family, and it's quite cheap. But what I tend to make the connection between organic food and price is that they're often paying for organic packaged food. So you're actually paying for the marketing and you're paying for the packaging, and you're not really getting a heck of a lot of food in that box or in that bag. So if you want to save money on organic food, you buy produce that came straight from the farm. Maybe it went to the farmer's market. Maybe you went to the farm and picked it up, or it's in the produce section of your grocery store. So I love Sherry Strong. I'm a huge fan of Sherry Strong, and she's a phenomenal nutritionist and food activist, real food activist. And she wrote a great book called Return to Food. She also delivered really brilliant workshops in our Green Mustache Cafes called How to Eat Organic and Healthy on Less than $70 a week. And you can do it. And so what she talked about too is she talked about, let's say you do eat organic all the time and you notice that your bills are quite high. Again, look at what you're purchasing. Are you purchasing, a bottle of organic wine that maybe costs, anywhere from $10 to $30 that you're going to consume most likely in one night, or an organic bottle of olive oil that, would probably last you a lot longer. But again, you actually don't really need the olive oil to be healthy because you can get those oils directly from your produce, which is much cheaper. And it's going to be much better for you because at the end of the day, potatoes come with omega-3s and omega-6s and lots of other good quality fats. Your romaine lettuces, your kales, your spinach, your sprouts, basically all plant life comes with fat in it. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think they need to get their fats from animals or they need to get their fats from pressed, olive oil or pressed coconut oil or anything other. Oil comes from everything. Basically, it comes from the vegetable or the fruit that needs to be pressed to get the oil out of it. So go directly to the source. And what you'll find is you will save hundreds of dollars by not buying the packaged, bottled out there. So when it comes to organic, you can actually eat organic if you, for quite inexpensively compared to the way you're currently doing it if you actually just switch over to the produce. Yes, of course, it's going to take more time in your kitchen because now you need to wash produce, you need to chop it, cook it, eat it raw, shred it, juice it, blend it, do whatever you need to do. But you know what? At the end of the day, you're going to be healthier for it because you won't be eating that packaged organic food that comes with all of the potential colorings and dyes and the salts, the results that you really want to avoid. So also talk about eating organic when it comes to your health and the importance of it. A lot of people think about themselves. They're like, it's about my money purchasing organic. How much is it going to cost me? It's about my health, and that's why I purchase organic, or my family's health. So we're often thinking just about ourselves or our family, and that's great. It's important to think about. But let's think about what it means to purchase organic for the people who are actually growing your food. Okay, so imagine you can shake the hand of the farmer that grew your food. And in most cases, we really should be shaking the hand of whoever provided us or made us the food. So a lot of our organic produce, especially being in British Columbia, we can only grow food, May until, let's say, October, November for the most part. A lot of our winter squashes and our kales and collard greens can grow even into the winter underneath the snow, and that's amazing. But for the most part, a lot of our food, if we are eating fresh produce and fruits and vegetables, has to come from somewhere else, usually from California, from Mexico, from overseas, New Zealand, Australia. So we're importing a lot of this food. Now, let's just, stay with me here as we hop on a plane. We're going to travel overseas or down south. We're going to meet those farmers. And when you choose non-organic food, okay, what you're saying is basically when you choose conventional food, you're really saying, I don't really care about the farmers who grow my food. They're so far away that I actually don't think about them. But imagine them, that they're in their crop dusters or they're out there, by hand, maybe with a hose, or maybe it's the crops, the seeds that they're purchasing from Monsanto and the fertilizers and chemicals that they have to apply. But basically they're spraying that stuff onto their crops and their communities are being smothered in these herbicides and insecticides and pesticides and other chemicals. And all of those chemicals are entering into those farmers' air systems, water systems, food systems, soil systems. And we are one planet. Like there are no borders when it comes to the environment like there is the border between Mexico and the US and the US and Canada. We don't have these border systems that can separate people. When it comes to air quality, soil quality, food quality, and water quality, because everything's connected. Eventually, all of those chemicals that those farmers are spraying directly onto their crops are going to first directly impact the farmers and their families. And then all of those chemicals are going to slowly and sometimes quickly travel through our air systems and water systems and end up in our backyard. So at the end of the day, when you're choosing conventional food and you're choosing the mounds and mounds of chemicals that get sprayed on those foods, you are eventually saying, yeah, for sure, I welcome those chemicals into our body. But really first, going back to the farmers are the first ones that get hit by that. Now, I gave a presentation in, I believe it was Kelowna, at the BC Sustainable Communities Conference, and it was on pesticides and the need for municipalities to have pesticide bylaws. And I was on this great panel with these two other doctors. One of the doctors was from CAPE, the Canadian Association for Physicians for the Environment. So physicians who do research on all the environmental effects on human health. And it was brilliant because we were both up there on stage giving our presentations. Didn't talk prior to giving the workshop, and we were both referencing the exact same research when it came to pesticides and health and the need for organic food and clean lawns. Our gardens need to be cleaned because our babies and our dogs, they're on their hands and knees and paws walking through those gardens that really need to make sure that they are not sprayed with chemicals because they're the first ones that are going to get in contact with it. So one of the books that we referenced is Sandra Steingraber's, her book and her documentary called Living Downstream. So what does living downstream mean? So it means whatever we do here in our community right now will eventually make it downstream to the next community. And what they do in their community will eventually go downstream either through the waterways or the airways and eventually go downstream and affect the next community. So our planet, our entire planet is one big system. We are not any different from it. Our bodies, our human bodies are made up of the exact same things as our insects and our soil and our trees and our grass and the next human who lives in the next community downstream. So we are all made up of the same things and we all require the same things to live. We need food, water, air, light, and love. I'm going to throw love in there. So remember, so when you are choosing conventional food, because it's cheaper, a lot of the times it's not actually any cheaper. When you're choosing conventional food, because you think, well, I can just wash it. Sure, there's the dirty dozen food, but at the end of the day, I don't believe in the dirty dozen because of the fact that you're not thinking about the farmers who had to spray those crops downstream, and that's eventually going to come upstream and affect you as well. So the dirty dozen, I don't buy it at all. Sure, for our health, our individual health, we can test the food and say, well, the pesticides didn't really get through the thick skin of that produce or fruit, so therefore it's not going to affect me. But the farmer and their family and their community was affected by it when they were spraying those crops. So I don't buy into the dirty dozen mentality. I buy into that. Know your farmer, know if they are spraying or not. If they aren't certified organic, but they're really working towards that, then definitely support them. But then again, you need to be able to have that eye-to-eye contact with your farmer and know that they are not spraying in the middle of the night, that they're not cutting corners, and that they truly are wanting to be the best type of farmer that they are, a biodynamic farmer, permaculture farmer, somebody who believes in using the least amount of harm on their farm to create amazing produce that is nutrient rich. Ask them if they're testing their soils. Because that's really important as well. It's one thing to grow organic food in soils that are nutrient depleted. It's another thing to grow organic food in soils that are nutrient rich, because those vegetables and those fruits are also going to be able to get the nutrients out of the soil, which then will be delivered to your body. You don't want to be growing from a farmer who's mass monocrops, who, doesn't care that the seed that they planted is raping and pillaging the nutrients out of the soil, and they're not doing anything to replenish that through nitrogen fixation techniques and all the other things that I don't even know about when it comes to farming. But I do know that, fertilizing the soil with natural fertilizers and compost is really the best way to go. So get to know your farmers when it comes to organic. So I thought about creating a top 10 reasons why you don't want to purchase organic. And really it comes down to, you really don't care about your environment. You don't care about the environment of your farmers. You don't understand what it means to live downstream or upstream of somebody who is polluting the environment with these chemicals, that conventional farmers use to grow their crops. You don't care really about your body at the end of the day, or you don't understand enough the harm that these chemicals are doing. You haven't done the research on conventional farming practices and what that versus organic farming practices and what that means for crop yield. So how much food are we actually producing in relationship to like access to food in these communities that really where it's more political and economic means as to why they're not able to access the food. It has nothing to do with the amount of food that's being produced in the world, because we do, like I mentioned earlier, waste so much food. So I hope I've made a strong enough case as to why we need to be purchasing organic. A lot of times too, when I go into my clients' homes and they say, we purchase 100% organic all the time, and I open up the cupboards, often again, what I see is I see a lot of packaged organic food. And a bag of organic potato chips and a bag of organic Oreos and a box of organic crackers, really doesn't constitute good health at the end of the day. I don't know anybody who's been able to live off of the organic, what do you call them? The little goldfish crackers, that still at the end of the day have they're not made up of real foods. They're made up of powdered, processed imitation food. And sure, the company might use organic materials all the time. So don't be brainwashed by the word organic. And in fact, what I would like to challenge you to do is the next time you say the word organic, you're actually just talking about real food. There's a brilliant, I guess it's a meme. I guess that's what it's called, but it's, it's gone viral, and it's just a simple retro photo picture meme thing that basically shows, this woman from probably the 40s or 50s, and she's got a beautiful bag or basket of, produce, and it says organic food, or as our grandparents used to call it, food. And I think that is so awesome, because it's true. We never used to have to label food organic or conventional. And I like what they're doing in a lot of countries in the EU, is that they're actually just labeling the conventional food. And that's what we should be doing. We should just be labeling food that's been sprayed with chemicals. We should be labeling it as, toxic food, harmful food, non-food, imitation food, label it whatever you want, but we should make it so that organic food shouldn't have to come with a label. It should just mean that it was grown using the best practices possible and the least amount of chemicals possible. So the next time you go out there and you want to purchase organic food, if you have to read a label on a box or a package, maybe just put that back on the shelf and head down to the produce section and choose the orange and the apple and the collards and the any of the other beautiful, root vegetables and green vegetables and fruit that you can find over there, and really get your family turned on to what real food actually is. And then you'll never have to have this debate about organic or non-organic. You always just choose the food that's been grown in the best quality soils ever with the least amount of chemicals. So I thank you for joining us. We were a couple minutes late getting started today, but stay tuned for our next Facebook Live broadcast. I'm loving doing these. It's super exciting just to be able to share the knowledge that I've accumulated over the last 20 years of being in the environmental health sector and the human health sector, which are really, truly just one and the same. And I know it's hard to, really sift through all of the information that is constantly being thrown at us every day, especially through the brilliant marketers who do take, what used to be real food and they turn it into packaged food, and then they label it with all of these so many labels, right? Like now everything's gluten-free and it's vegan and it's organic and it's, so many certifications. And if it feels like it's overwhelming to sift through the ingredients and the labels and the certifications that are on those packaged foods, then you know what? Make it easy on yourself and really just get rid of it. And like I said, head to the produce section. Make it really easy on yourself to get healthy, because at the end of the day, humans have been on this planet for, do not quote me on this, I think it's about 200,000 years, if I'm not mistaken. It could be a little bit more, a little bit less. We have really just lived off of what's grown on the planet for so long. I love that I just recently found out that it was because humans, they used to live off, a lot of the foods that came from the sea, so the fish and the seaweed and everything, and they lived on that. And then once they discovered tubers, basically, that came out of the earth, so like the potatoes and the yams and the gingers and all of those root vegetables that came out of the earth, then a human brain really developed, and it really grew quite significantly. And, and prior to that, they were eating a lot of meat. And yes, our brains did get larger when we did start consuming meat, but it was when we actually turned to the root vegetables that our brains got really, really big and powerful and strong, and have made us to be the thinking, cognitive beings that we are today. So it is really confusing now, because it's only been about 100 years, really since the and industrial revolution, that we've been constantly inundated by, information about what we should be eating. And at the end of the day, we can sort of look at what humans have been eating since the beginning of time, and what they've been eating is just real food that came from the soil, from the sea, and they consumed it without much processing or packaging. Fire came along and they started to cook food, great. But we still have the choice to eat cooked food, raw food. But at the end of the day, food just needs to be that food, stuff that was grown on a tree, on a bush, in the soil, on the land, and we eat it. And I like David Wolf's, I think it's David Wolf that says it, but, he says, if it was made in a plant, like a manufacturing processing plant, don't eat it. If it is a plant, eat it. And you can really carry that mantra around with you, everywhere, and keep your life super simple, so that you don't have to go to school to learn how to read labels and packaging, and so that you can keep your life pretty basic. And the end result, what's going to come out of that is that your health is going to be optimal, because your body's not going to be fighting to have to detoxify all of these chemicals, and toxins and dyes and fillers and sodiums and high salts and refined sugars that come in the packaged food. And at the end of the day, you're just choosing real food that hasn't been sprayed with chemicals, and it leaves our body, it allows our body to function with ease. And who wouldn't want a little bit of ease in your life? So keep it simple, people. Purchase organic food. If you don't think you can afford it, ditch the toys, ditch the vacations, keep life simple. I know that seems harsh, but really at the end of the day, there's no excuses for not buying organic at the end of the day. Or at least buying from farmers that maybe not certified organic, but where your food is being grown. So we do need to make that shift in our world. We do need to make that shift in our communities to really reverse these chronic disease numbers. 1 in 4 people are living with a chronic disease. 1 in 2 are now being diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. And it's an epidemic. Friends, like, this is really an epidemic, and the only way we're really going to get around it is by returning to a more simpler diet that is clean, that is nutritious, and that is easy for our body to assimilate the nutrients from, to digest, and to then eliminate the metabolic waste that our body creates. So buy organic food. Encourage your friends and family members to purchase organic, or purchase from farmers who are growing clean, nutrient-dense food. At the end of the day, those are the 2 things that you really need to focus on. And it's all about prioritizing, right? If you prioritize your health, prioritize your life, then you can make those choices to purchase clean food. At the end of the day, real food and not imitation food. So thanks for staying with us. Check out our Sea to Sky Thrivers website. That is the nonprofit arm of Richer Health and of the Green Mustache, where we have 4 amazing programs that are being delivered in communities all around British Columbia. We are fundraising for a lot of those projects. So if you want to volunteer, donate, please do so, because we want to get the message out into schools, into elementary schools and high schools, First Nations communities, into doctors' offices as well, and hospitals, that food is medicine, real food is medicine, and that's what we all need to be turning towards. Also, some exciting news. We have purchased a beautiful house in Pemberton, British Columbia, and that is going to be our wellness center, where you'll get to learn firsthand, one-on-one with me and the Richer Health team and the Green Mustache team, how to eat to beat disease. So we'll be launching the website and all the information about our new wellness center, where we're going to be teaching people how to eat to beat disease. And so people can experience that firsthand. Go to the Green Mustache Cafe if you are in town in Whistler, in Squamish. We have 3 locations opening up, 2 on the North Shore, 1 in Revelstoke, BC. And if you want to bring healthy food to your community, check out our franchise page at greenmustache.com. And so you could get on the list to potentially be your own boss, own your own restaurant, and bring healthy, organic, nutrient-dense, real food into your community to get your friends, family, and neighbors super, uber healthy. So thanks for listening in as we talked about organic food. Kept it pretty simple today, but at the end of the day, you can continue to do the research on it. If you have any questions, email us. We are happy to debunk really bad research. We're happy to bring light to really good research that's being done on the issues of organic food versus non-organic food. So choose real food, people. Eat real to heal. Thanks for listening in, and stay tuned for next week's talk. Have a brilliant week.